Happy Families podcast. It's the podcast for the time-poor parent who just wants answers now.
Your problem is you don't know how to let go. Because as soon as you figure that out, you're going to go really deep.
And now here's the stars of our show, my mum and dad.
Hello, this is Dr. Justin Coulson, the author of 6 books about raising happy families and the founder of happyfamilies.com.au. Normally I'm with my wife, my co-host, Kylie, mum to our 6 daughters. But during the school holidays around most of the country, Kylie and I have taken the opportunity to spend some quality family time with our kids. And we hope that you're doing the same. However, we wanted to keep the podcast going because some people's routines are still the way they always were. And on today's podcast, we're looking back at my Parenting in Perspective interview series, which we published last year. On episode 119, I spoke with Ant Williams. As one of the deepest men in the world, Ant has pushed through both physical and mental barriers to hold his breath for over 8 minutes. He's dived to 100 metres under the surface and he can swim 240 metres on one breath. That's nearly 5 laps of an Olympic-sized swimming pool. In short, he knows how to overcome some of the most demanding and uncomfortable challenges that a person can face. Ant teaches others how to lean into discomfort and take positive, calculated risk. So I started by asking Ant about what parents should do when they're feeling out of their depth.
I was quite fascinated by this, around why it was such a deal for me. And because I think it's this type of imposter syndrome where you feel that you're in a position of authority or responsibility, helping support others. In my case, in athletes in my sport, yet I felt like a true imposter. I think that when you first have a child, then there's this belief that you'll automatically be a great parent because you're a wonderful person and you buy into this, right? And then you realize that it's actually really hard and that you're ill-equipped. And then you sort of, I think you do one of two things. There are those amongst us who seem to adapt very quickly and try to figure it out and invest a lot of energy. And then there are those of us who are more stubborn and just go, this is just who I am. It's me being more authentic to myself. And, you're just going to get what you receive from me. And I'm sure if it's anything like what I received, then you'll be fine. And we don't adapt. We just kind of pursue and push forward. I've been freediving for 18 years and I still would find that on probably 30 or 40% of my dives, especially the deeper ones, I would experience fear or a sense that I need to be able to control everything, but I can't. Freediving did teach me something quite early on, which was actually to let go of that need to feel like I should be in full control the whole time, but to more follow a set of principles and guidelines that I knew would keep me safe through each dive. And it took me a long time to evolve those, but an early mistake that I think I kept doing for, I reckon, about a decade was diving with lots of fear, feeling that as long as I puffed up my chest and asserted my control and dominance in each dive, that I would get deeper than any other athlete. And then I found that most other athletes started to go past me in terms of how deep they were going, and I got stuck at a particular depth because that approach was no longer serving me well. And I think that there's some interesting analogies here when I think of my own experience in parenting as well, of trying to exert control or convince my kids that they should do it my way. I need to find that actually if I took a step backwards and looked at it more holistically and turned the volume down on my ego, that I actually might find a far more effective way of getting the outcomes with my kids that I truly need.
It's the Happy Families podcast.
Imagine a home where discipline got results without anyone having to feel bad or in trouble. The Do's and Don'ts of Discipline is a webinar to help parents set limits with love, compassion and humanity. Find it now at happyfamilies.com.au/shop.
It's the Happy Families podcast, the podcast for the time-poor parent who just wants answers now. And we're continuing a conversation with Ant Williams, one of the deepest free divers in the world.
It's really interesting though, as well, the way you say that, Ant, because I'm thinking, those strategies that served you well until you got to that particular depth, let's say, for example, 40 meters, those strategies worked until that point. And I think as parents, we kind of get into patterns and we implement strategies at a certain level. But once our children get to a particular depth, that is, once they get to 3 or 4 or 7, we need to do something different because they've changed and we can't stay in that same same pattern. But what about the pressure? You know, you described the extraordinary pressure, lungs the size of a grapefruit, feeling like you're being impaled and a ball is being pulled through your body and out the other side. As parents, we feel tremendous pressure. We feel in some ways that our children are doing some high pressure things to us. How do you deal with that pressure when you're under the water, and what does that teach us about parenting?
Yeah. So this is, I think, possibly the greatest thing that freediving has taught me, in fact, is, and it was a hard lesson to learn. It genuinely was that if I wanted to get deeper than 50 meters, then I had to change something fundamentally, not in my physicality or my technique or my equipment, but in my mindset. And I think for me, it's the same for parenting. Just like you said, you just need a different game plan in order to deal with new challenges. And for 10 years, was it 10 years? No, it's probably about 5 years I was stuck at 50 meters. And then 10 years I was stuck at another block, which was 80 meters. And for the 50 meter one, it was actually coincidental. It was someone else who gave me the guidance by saying something very extraordinary to me. I was at a master freediving camp over in Turkey. And I remember it was the final day of coaching and training after 2 weeks in Turkey in a plot called Kaş. We were out on a boat. It was awful conditions with white caps and, waves. And there was only sort of 6 of us, and some of the top freedivers in the world and the best freediving coach in the world was there. And I was there suited up thinking, there's no way any of us are going to dive today. These conditions are atrocious. But I didn't say that because I didn't want to be seen as the sook in the group. And there was this one guy, his name was Topi Lottenhangas, who was a Finnish guy. And he was the world record holder in swimming down to extraordinary depths with no fins on whatsoever. And he hadn't really said a word to anyone for 2 weeks. He was like the most introverted guy I've ever met. Anyway, I was there freaking out. It was the last day and I hadn't got past my 50 bloody meters. And I went and sat down on the transom, so the back of the boat, just about to get in the water. And I sat next to Topi. And he didn't say a word. I didn't say a word. And as I was putting on my mask, he turned around, he looked at me and he said, "You know your problem?" And I just looked at him and went, "What?" He goes, "Your problem is you don't know how to let go. You try to fight. And every time you try to fight, you get stuck. Your ears lock up, you tense up, and then you turn around and you have to come up because you can't bloody equalize, mate." And he goes, "Your problem is you don't know how to let go." He goes, "As soon as you figure that out, you're going to go really deep." And then he just got in the water and the bugger swam off. I was like, hang on a second. What did you mean by that? And the weird thing is that then I swam out. When it was my turn, I went out to the rope and the conditions were awful. Waves are breaking over my mouth as I was trying to breathe up. And all I could think of was this bugger had put this idea into my mind to let go. And the whole way down on my swim, I'm feeling all uncomfortable and bent out of shape. But over and over in my mind, it's saying, let go. And then as I sail past 40 meters again, in my mind, it's just saying, let go. And then I sail past 50 meters and I sail past 60 meters. And then I ended up turning at 68 meters and swimming back up. And it was the weirdest thing ever. It felt like a beautiful dive. It actually did feel in control, even though I'd released my sense of control. And it was the biggest shift I've ever made in freediving. I'm annoyed that it took me 10 years or 5 years to make that shift. And that it took one very strange comment. And sometimes that's all it takes, is just some insight or inspiration from somewhere else to give you that breakthrough that you need.
Now, I'm not going to suggest that parents need to let go. But if letting go was a useful strategy, and frankly, I think that letting go of control is a very important parenting strategy, how would you advise somebody to let go? How does a parent make that switch where they still care about the outcome? I mean, clearly, as a free diver, you don't want to die. You want to get back to the surface. You very much care about the outcome. So how do you continue to guide your children, care about the outcome, and help them to move in an ideal direction while having that level of detachment, that ability to let go? How does a parent do that in real life, in a practical way?
Well, for me, it's about realizing that I'm part of the issue. And that's hard. I think, to accept on a number of occasions when we see our kids being unruly is you think, this is my kid being unruly and it's them. They've got to fix this and I'm going to tell them how to fix this and they should listen to me because I'm the adult and I know best. Whereas in fact, we still want the same outcome. We want to get our kids through something that's a significant challenge. The insight for me from the freediving has been, I still want the right outcome, which is to go deeper. I want to feel that experience of being successful with that, but I have to be more humble. I actually have to acknowledge that what I'm doing is not working in this situation, and I have to be open to different paths to change it up. And when I figured that out in freediving, it was monumental for me. I think it took me years before I then learnt how to take that insight and apply it to how I was parenting. And I still don't get it right all the time. There's no way. But I catch myself more often now going, what outcome am I really after here? What's the best outcome for my son or my daughter? And what else can I try? If I put my ego to one side and explore different paths, then what does my child really need from me today or right in this moment? And I'm just trying to be open to explore different ways of being for my children.
That's Ant Williams. You can hear his full interview on episode 119 of the Parenting in Perspective podcast series. Kylie and I back tomorrow with another episode of the Happy Families podcast, and we're looking forward to reconnecting with you after the school holidays. If you're enjoying the podcast, we love those ratings and reviews. You can jump onto the Apple Podcast app and tell us what you think about the podcast. It helps other people to find out about the podcast to make their family happier. The Happy Families podcast is produced by Justin Rulon from Bridge Media, and our executive producer is Craig Bruce. If you'd like more details about how your family can be happier, just visit the website happyfamilies.com.au.